Hey guys, I'm Chris Buck, and a very warm welcome to Friday Fretworks. And this week, a solo breakdown, some free tabs, some Line 6 Helix presets, and a somewhat cautionary tale.
I only wanna see you with a purple rain.
So you may have seen that in September of this year, both myself and my band Cardinal flew out to Europe to do a couple of shows, namely Guitar Summit in Mannheim, Germany, and Festival in Prague. Both were an insane amount of fun, but Guitar Summit in particular was a memorable, if somewhat hectic, few days. I did a few clinics, played with Cardinal, played with Thomas Blug, and played with Martin Miller, the latter of which yielded a video of Purple Rain that's been kind of doing the rounds online and has racked up the better part of 400,000 views in the last week alone. No doubt in part because of Martin's truly incredible guitar playing and amazing band that he's built around him, but also his massive YouTube channel. It's actually been featured in a few guitar magazines as well over the last week, so understandably I've had a lot of questions in regards to not only what I played, but how I played it, what gear I was using, what amp, if any, hint hint, I wasn't, etc, etc. So I thought now would be a good opportunity to try and break that down, kind of talk you through my modus operandi and some of the thought process behind the solo, what gear I was in fact using, as well as tell you a funny story about how it nearly went very, very wrong. So as I said, I'd actually played with Cardinal earlier that evening. We were on just before Martin, and upon finishing our set, decided to head back to our dressing room, at which point I ran into a man backstage that I'd not seen in a good while. Good friend of mine, Mr. Paul Davids, no doubt a man you will be familiar with if you inhabit this world of guitar. Fast forward, I guess the better part of an hour and a half of Martin's set, myself and Paul just sat backstage having a catch-up, absent-mindedly being passed beers by anyone who was going past, at which point I not only lost track of time, but quite how many of these transpired, quite strong German beers, I've just googled it and it was 7.5%, that I'd actually drunk. I guess probably got through about 5 or 6 bottles, at which point someone reminded me not only that I agreed to go up on stage, but my guitar only had 5 strings at this point. So ensue panic stations. First thing I realised was that at some point in the last hour and a half my legs had abandoned me. Scrabbling around trying to find a guitar to go on stage to play a song that I couldn't really remember. Definitely couldn't remember what key it was in. I was fairly sure it was in B flat as per the original, but I've played this track innumerable times in innumerable covers bands over the years, invariably in the key of A. I think I just about got through it. You've seen the video at the start of today's video, but needless to say, I've never been quite so nervous on stage and never watched a video back with my arse cheeks quite so firmly clenched. But yeah, not an experience I'm in a rush to repeat. So before we start delving into the solo, I thought it'd be worth touching upon the gear that I was using. You can kind of see it in various shots throughout the video, but it bears repeating. Of course, it was the Line 6 Helix. The presets for which I'm using, they were kind of all-encompassing through the Cardinal set. I'm going to chuck them all in one bundle and make them available through my website. Again, linked down in the description box below. Using the Helix as well as the power cab on stage just for a little bit of volume and kind of sustain and feedback. Made the decision to fly with the Helix. Well, actually, I say that I didn't fly with the Helix. I borrowed a Helix out there. for that very reason. Just accessible, easy, and just kind of takes the pressure out of traveling with so much gear. Of course, took my Yamaha Revstar, which in turn then ended up in a different country to me coming back, as did Sam's bass, which was incredibly helpful given that we were literally on the cusp of starting a UK tour. Bizarrely, that was actually the reason I didn't fly with my pedal board, was that I was worried as to where it was going to end up when we had a very quick turnaround coming back to the UK. But in kind of dialing in the Helix for all of those shows, developed a few different presets, primarily for the Cardinal Black set, but also as a little bit kind of do-it-all survival guide for moments like the Purple Rain solo, which, as I said, I will make available through my website. It's not the old preset that I've been using for a good number of years now, but a couple of new ones that not only are specific to Cardinal Black tracks, but, as I said, just my general Helix sound. So if you want to check that out, link down in the description box. In regard to the guitar, as I said a minute earlier, tried walking on stage initially with 5 strings. That was on my custom gold top Revstar, having snapped one during the Cardinal Black set, so quickly grabbed the first guitar that I came to, which was a Yamaha Revstar Standard, black with P90s, that had been on the Yamaha stand for the entire duration of the weekend. Hence the fingerprints, hence it looking as though I'd just eaten a KFC off the top of it. So apologies for that. I'll make sure it looks better on camera before I take one on stage next time. So that's kind of it in regard to the gear. Of course, then the power cab on stage, just to have a little bit of stage volume and not be entirely reliant on hearing myself back through the wedge, which, as I've said in the past, sounds like being a can. I'm not really a fan of guitar in wedges. So that's kind of it in regard to the gear. If you want to hear that in action with Cardinal Black for a little bit of context, here it is during Cardinal Black set earlier in the evening. So enough wittering, let's delve into the Purple Rain solo. As I said, the accompanying tab for this is available free through my website. So let's start at the start. This usually is a pretty good place to start with that first bum-clenching iconic note that I was so worried I was going to get wrong on the night. Obviously the track is in B flat, not A. It's worth pointing out that would have been a mistake of the maker. And you're essentially outlining the major third harmony of the track, or the underlying chord, which of course in this case is that B flat. So it's essentially these two notes, but played right up here. And instead of playing them, you kind of bend into it. You kind of countrify it a little bit. So you get this. Let's see if I nailed it. Yeah, that vibrato getting like a gate swinging in the wind there towards the end. That's something I've noticed myself doing if I haven't got enough gain or kind of sustain for what I'm after, I guess. As I said, the preset, the Helix preset, which I will make available to purchase on my website if you want to check that out, is my kind of typical Cardinal Black do-it-all kind of Helix preset, I guess. And of course, this solo in this track is fairly mental and probably involves more gain than I would ever ordinarily use, I guess, at least typically. So you can kind of hear me trying to kind of cling on to that note there at the end with that increasingly kind of wild vibrato, but at least we were in the right key, which is always a good start. So listen. Straight away there, we're bending back up to a D note, over that G minor chord, so we're kind of outlining the fifth. So we've gone from a kind of perfect major kind of third harmony down to outlining the fifth of the next chord. So we've got the kind of first couple of seconds of the solo out of the way there. As I said, I was kind of fairly intent on, at least if I started in the right key, I could probably kind of find my way from that point forth. So to try and kind of break that down a little bit, I guess, as I said, the tabs will be available for free through my website if you want to check out the link down below. when I break solos down like this, at least in this kind of context, I tend to try and make it a little bit more about the kind of modus operandi, I guess, and more the thought process behind it, so much as a note-for-note transcription, because until I actually try and sit down and work out what I played, it's kind of guesswork, especially when there's a couple of beers worse for wear at this point as well. So we've got this kind of thing going on. Into that rundown. The rundown, I've talked about this endlessly in different videos, different clinics, different masterclasses, etc., etc. Knowing your intervals, at least on one or two strings, I think is such a lyrical, kind of fluid way of running down or running up. So the rundown, again, not to break it down note for note, the rundown that I then do. So much of that is that kind of faux slide playing, I guess. Of course, you could kind of... You kind of work your way down across numerous strings, but for me, it doesn't give it the same kind of lyrical fluidity, for want of a better phrase. So that rundown, all I remember about that is landing kind of intentionally so, and being kind of quite pleased that I had landed on the major third of the F. Landing on that A down at the bottom of the run. So let's have a look. So you got that little at the end of that thing. So again, tab will be available if you want to learn this note for note, but we've got that kind of... just in the nick of time, ending up on that major harmony. Again, I knew which note I was aiming for there. We've got that kind of... aiming for that major third harmony, again over that start chord. So all of that rundown, or run up I should say, I think is the bit that follows. Yeah. Something like that. I remember kind of thinking at this point, I kind of started relatively high. Of course, it's weird. I guess typically for me, solos tend to start a little bit kind of lower and work from low to high. But of course, when you have a solo which is at least has a very iconic start, that kind of dictates that you kind of need to start in that place in the neck. So it kind of shifts your focus a little bit, or shifts your kind of direction within the solo. So we started there. The first part, that kind of first section of the solo, unusually high for me, I guess, all that. Work my way down pretty much as low as you can go. Etc., etc. But I remember thinking consciously when I got to that point, it kind of feels like, I don't know, we were probably, let's have a look, we're a good kind of 30 or so seconds into the solo in what is about a minute and a half worth of solo. So I kind of guess it felt at that moment like, right, this is the point where you pick it up. This is where it needs to kind of step it up. There we go, work your way higher up the neck, which is kind of what happens. Got those little flutters there. Whatever it is. Do that hell of a lot. That kind of it's very Derek Trucks, very vocal inspired, I guess. That little kind of flick There is no doubt a proper Latin name for that, of which I do not know. So I've kind of worked my way up to that point, that note of course being the root note. So it's very much focusing on your landing notes, very much focusing on either the fifths, the major thirds, the roots, etc, etc, but making sure that you are kind of landing on notes that are not just relevant to the chord progression that you're playing in, but are musical and harmonious and all other kind of superlatives. Keeps it interesting and keeps it melodic. Again, something I've spoken about at length in numerous videos, this idea of repetition. Using a kind of phrase and repeating it, hopefully not ad nauseum, but giving that sense of repetition, giving that sense of something for the audience to really wrap their ear around, and just something which becomes a motif in itself, I guess, hopefully. So if we rewind a couple of seconds, again, it's kind of working its way up to the kind of climax of the solo, I guess, which is that big step and a half bend up on your 21st fret, which we'll get to now. Watching that back, I'm still in two minds as to whether I hit that or not. I think I'm slightly flat. So the bend itself, let's have a look. We've got... It's the same bend as the Tell Me How It Feels solo, for anyone familiar with that. It's resolving back down to a little bit lower, but as I said, I'm still in two minds whether it's... If you listen to it on a phone, through phone speakers, it sounds perfectly in pitch. Listening to it on headphones here, it sounds slightly flat. It's one of them. It's not sharp, I know that much. So low. Quite like that note. I'm not sure what that would be in terms of the kind of its relation to the track. We're kind of leaning on that A momentarily. Seem to remember that is coming up. That note was slightly flat there as well. Resolving back down to that note there at the end, the resolving chord, the underlying kind of key of the track. As I said, the tabs will be available. These videos are always a little bit kind of meandering and aimless because I guess as much as anything else, I'm not massively familiar with what I played. The idea is of course that it was improvised, so it's kind of trying to reverse engineer something which I guess was relatively entirely spontaneous in that respect, and then trying to figure out how well I got on, especially with a couple of beers inside me. So yeah, that's that. And there you have it. Overall, definitely a memorable experience, both for good and slightly less good, slightly hazy reasons. But thank you to Martin and his incredible band for having me up. The sweetest guys, and needless to say, Martin is an absolutely killer guitar player. So if by some miracle you're not subscribed to his YouTube channel, hit the link down below and check it out. Promise you won't regret it. As ever, I'm Chris Buck. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe, hit that bell icon if you haven't already, and I shall see you next week for another episode of Friday Fretworks. Cheers guys, take care, I'll see you soon.